We've got the time, we've got the appetite. Let's tie up those loose ends from Imola. Let's get started.
And they are going to win! Pierre Gasly wins the Italian Grand Prix! 3 cars going wheel to wheel as Perez is caught by Charles Leclerc and there's 3 cars gone off! It's a DNF for MAX! The World Championship record is equalled. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time champion of the world!
I like it. That was a good one, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, like a pair of running shoes. You just
punchy.
Yeah. No, not punchy.
Not punchy, no. Oh, right, sorry. Mixed metaphors.
I was thinking like, running shoes, tying up laces, tying up loose ends.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah, so as we promised, we would be talking about Sergio Perez and Ferrari from the Imola Grand Prix. There was just so much going on in that race. We thought, hey, as I say, we've got the time. Why not let it spill over into another episode? So, yeah, Sergio Perez, he apologised post-race to Red Bull for his performance being a qualification in second and then finishing in 12th place. The more I've thought about this, the worse it seems to me, the sort of uglier the race gets for Sergio Perez on reflection, in review. What do you guys think about Sergio Perez's second outing in the Red Bull car?
This is really difficult, and actually you're right. With more reflection, I think my opinion changes. After the race, I was very quick in my mind to criticise Sergio Perez, especially as he dumped the car onto the at the front, which was amazing. And I think that's the problem when you set yourself up as to those sort of highs, beating Max Verstappen and being in second from the get-go. I think then you've got to go two ways. The bigger the rise, the further you fall. And so I think at the time I was pretty annoyed that he let himself down and the team down. But most of all, he let me down. No. But actually, I think we have to give him a little bit of slack. It was a really unfortunate race for him. And it was a difficult race for loads of people. It was really wet at the beginning. And, he didn't help himself by spinning out a little bit. I got a few flashbacks to Bottas in Turkey last year, watching Sergio Perez, now nearly 2 weeks ago. But I think, actually, the takeaway that I haven't seen mentioned that much is Sergio Perez demonstrated his raw speed in that Red Bull car. And that's a great thing for his future this season, especially as the car seems quite difficult to drive. So I think as he adapts to it more, he'll come out on top more. So I'm feeling less negative now than I did at the time. I don't know what you think, Liv.
Yeah, I kind of get what you mean, because you talk about like the time since the race. I was thinking about it today, and I was like, oh my god, what even happened in the race? Like, I feel like I have such bad memory loss when between races, like we talk about it a few days later, and we're absolutely so pumped. And then I was like, oh god, what even happened? I'm so ready for Portugal.
There was drama.
But, yeah, and then I was like, I literally was talking to my parents about it, and they were like, yeah, like a lot happened, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, it was so good. But absolutely, looking back, it's not as horrific. But on the day, I've got to admit, I was really disappointed in Sergio, or like for Sergio is probably a better way of saying it. I just once again saw everywhere, the curse of the second seat, and I do love to joke about it, but you've got to wonder like when will it end? And it clearly is difficult for anyone who's not Max Verstappen to drive that car, and it's certainly. He's certainly capable of doing it, but it's not going to be a matter, clearly, as we've seen, of him just jumping in and being able to drive it perfectly. However, as you say, strong qualifying. I was, surprised, and so was he. I read that he was genuinely surprised to be on the second row, on the first row, in second, on the grid. So, yeah, like there was a lot of potential for that race, and obviously dropped back. I think it was like on quite cold tyres or something, but whatever. And then he like dropped back, and then eventually we saw that absolutely very, very weird event of overtaking under the safety car, or like regaining. He spun off went off track but when they were following the safety car, and then proceeded to take back his 2 or 3 places that he'd lost, which just isn't a thing. And to be honest, you can understand, a bit stressed about going off, quickness, need to dash back on, but it's only really I can think of like on the out lap, on the formation lap, where you can do that, because obviously if you're in the formation lap and you go off, you can find your place again on the grid. But it does seem odd with someone with Sergio's experience to make that error. Like, really wasn't great, to be honest. So that was what let it down for me quite a lot.
I completely forgot that happened, and it all gets amalgamated into one sort of mess of Perez's race when thinking about 2 weeks ago now. And you would have thought someone of his experience would have gone, hold on a minute, these are yellow flags, I should probably just check with the team, right? I should, hi guys, can I do this? No, you can't. Brilliant. No.
That's what I'm wondering as well, though. Like, where were the team engineers saying, Sergio, you can't do this? I mean, I'm not sure if those conversations took place and he sort of, pretended not to hear them, but surely it would have been far easier if he went, oh, damn, yeah, sorry, guys. Let the other 2 go past, and then it was all forgotten. But, yeah, 10-second time penalty, that really does bite. So, I think for both of them, both Perez and the racing engineers at Red Bull, it's a pretty basic error.
Yeah, and it was lucky he didn't get a 10-second stop-go penalty. They did revise that, because the difference between a stop-go penalty and a 10-second penalty is if it's a 10-second stop-go penalty, you come to the pits, that's 12 seconds of driving, you stop, that's 10 seconds, you have to do nothing to the car, and then you're not allowed to do anything to the car. You have to go again, and that's another 12 seconds or so out of the pit. So you can't even come in for a spare set of tyres. And I do actually think it was the right decision by the stewards not to give him a 10-second stop-go and just to give him 10 seconds, which is exactly the same as I just described. But when Perez stops, you're allowed to then work on the car to basically not totally waste the pit stop. So I'm glad the stewards didn't destroy his race completely by giving a stop-go penalty. But you're right, Tom, it was an amateur mistake there. And you got to ask yourself the questions, would Mercedes make that mistake?
I don't think it was a team thing, personally.
Yeah.
I don't think it was something where they were like, okay, Sergio, now please rejoin the track. I think they just went, he went to rejoin, and then I also saw, which I don't know if I 100% get, but someone said, it looks as if Daniel Ricciardo, who was one of the cars he repassed, sort of slowed to let him rejoin, and maybe Daniel was under the same sort of weird illusion that they all were under with the fence, I better let him back again.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because Daniel Ricciardo is a very, competitive racer. That doesn't sound like him in any way.
Maybe Ricciardo thought he was going to swing back onto the track and slow down to prevent a collision.
Quite possibly. It was very weird. It was such a weird situation, and basically just going back to what I said, I personally don't see someone of Perez's experience. We wouldn't be shocked, let's face it, we wouldn't be shocked if Mazepin had done that, would we?
Or Schumacher,
we wouldn't.
really.
No
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Or even Schumacher, yeah. We wouldn't be that shocked. But Perez's experience, you'd think, Red Bull or Racing Point or whatever he's in, that is not what you do. It's just not the rules. So it's a bit odd, and it just added a bit of a to his already kind of rubbish race and the way he went back in the way that he did. Such a strong starting position. And was he ever? But what's a good question, for you guys, really quickly? Do you think he was ever going to? Without that weird 10-second penalty and all that, was he ever going to keep up in the top sort of 1, 2, 3 positions, do you think?
Potentially, but I think if I'm right, didn't he spin after he had that 10-second time penalty, and that sent him down to 12th or 14th place? I think we're talking sort of lap 38, I believe. So I kind of feel that. I mean, don't get me wrong, the 10-second penalty is a huge issue for anyone, as I alluded to earlier. But I kind of feel like he made a rod for his own back in many ways through his driving on that wet surface. So yeah, because it was a weird one, because pre-race, when he qualified in second, I thought to myself, you know what, he's going to win this race, isn't he? I don't know how, he's just going to win this race, and it's going to really sort of shake the pack up and put it to Hamilton and to Verstappen. But no, he did show he was human, and did in many ways lose his sheen that he's been able to accrue over many years, in my eyes at least. And he kind of showed with not only the spins by himself, but also the safety car issue, that he is He's a very good driver, no doubt. An improvement on Albon. Sorry, Albon, but he's not a top driver, if that makes sense. He does make mistakes, which is why I don't think realistically, because of both issues, well, it's all self-inflicted injuries in many ways, he was ever really going to be in the top 4.
Yeah, so the summary really is it was a pretty catastrophic race for Perez, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be one that he's going to want to forget, and fingers crossed, going into Portugal this weekend, it will be a much better race for him and the Red Bull team. Maybe they get a 1-2 finish.
Well, I did read that. I mean, they all say this about each other, though, don't they? Red Bull think that this will be a more Mercedes-suited track, but then literally the other week, Mercedes were going, "We think Red Bull are going to be better than us." So it's just all games anyway. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the end, it's going to be a Williams favourable track, and everyone's going, "I didn't see that coming."
Exactly. That'll be the dream.
Oh, imagine. So yeah, on a more positive note, Ferrari. I mean, cast your minds back 2 episodes ago, and you'll hear me saying, "Oh, I don't think they're going to do very well. I'll be very surprised if they score points, both of them this weekend, etc., etc." How wrong could I be? Leclerc qualified in 4th and then retained that to finish 4th. But perhaps more surprisingly, Carlos Sainz qualified in 11th. Had a bit of a sketchy race by my definition, but was able to get himself up to 5th. Very strong points for Ferrari, just behind Norris, in front of Ricciardo. A pretty good weekend for them, don't you think?
Yep, another statement aged like fine wine from me. I touted that I thought they would do pretty well, and you replied with, "Wow, I've got those as Ferrari as my team that's not going to do so well." So pretty much for both. I mean, one of us was going to be correct, and we did set, didn't we have a wager on this? So we'll have to settle that when we're finally allowed to meet in person. Just going to tally. But yes, Ferrari, I am pleasantly surprised with their performance. I must admit I was a bit conflicted towards the end of the race, because on one hand I really wanted Ferrari to show that they were back strong, on the other hand I was desperately hoping Norris would hold on. So it was a bit of a weird scenario there, where it's kind of a win-win. But I'm a massive McLaren fan. If you ever want to invite me to Woking, McLaren, I live nearby. Please. So I was really pleased that they didn't get past, but Leclerc was close, and you could see that he was biting at the bit to get past that McLaren. So yeah, I think they really showed how far they've come. They've definitely reclaimed some of the horsepower. I don't think that's best evidenced by Ferrari. I actually think it's best evidenced by Alfa Romeo and how they look relatively strong this year. Relatively being the key word there. I mean, Kimi Räikkönen was in 13th, so that's not bad going for them. So yeah, I think Ferrari are actually back on a winner, and I think that's really good for this season. But more importantly, for next year, I feel like this will be a good springboard for them. And who knows? We might have 4 constructors that are battling between first and second. Which would be fantastic. And then for this year, I think definitely Ferrari will be fighting McLaren, and also it would be nice to see AlphaTauri sort of fighting in there a little bit to see if they can, who's going to get that magical 3rd spot and then 4th spot. So yeah, good stuff for us fans really, and good stuff for Ferrari. I think Binotto's job is a little bit more secure than it perhaps was at the end of last year. Yeah, I love his hair. But I never said this, but I think his hair and glasses combination is one of the best things about the paddock. It's just really funny. In the same way like Toto Wolff's voice is kind of iconic, I feel like Binotto's hair and glasses combination, if you had to just draw the silhouette of him, you would just draw that hair and the glasses, and you'd be like, I know exactly who that is. Yes.
I always felt that he was a bit too soft to be an F1 team principal. Like, I don't know, I just thought I'm not, pathetic's the wrong word, he's clearly not pathetic, but do you know what I mean? He just always looked
He didn't seem firm enough, like when it was all going wrong last season. No.
Yeah, he didn't seem firm, and he's just not the same sort of dominant or dominating sort of personality or stature that some of the others are. But anyway, we're off topic. Ferrari, yes. I think it is really good, and you mentioned sort of a win for the fans, and I think so far what we've seen this season and from the episode we're discussing, from the race we're discussing, that's been the biggest sort of result, is the fact that it's been so fantastic for the fans, and it's showing the fans that this year could be really, really good, both in like regard of like Hamilton and Verstappen and that battle, and Mercedes and Red Bull, but also for, as you mentioned, third and fourth and fifth places. It was also quite funny how heading into the season Ferrari was really seen as, you know, not really a contender, and they were dropped down in fantasy. Their team was worth a lot less, and in the opening credits for F1 they were dropped down the order, just based upon last year's results. But in reality, and thankfully, they are like competing again as we would expect. Not quite to the level that I'm sure the Tifosi and Italy and all the Ferrari fans would want, but yeah, it's fantastic to see. And with the lineup they have, clearly Carlos has shown at the weekend, you know, 11th to 5th is
that's a
really decent performance. And he drove well, like there wasn't too many errors, and it shows as well that he is getting used to that car, because at the end of the day we've got to remember that just like with the issues that Perez is having, Charles Leclerc has been in that car for a couple of years now, but Sainz has just stepped in from something very, and I do think like the McLaren car is very different to the Ferrari, and I don't really have a technical reason for that, but I would just say it as that way. So no, I think he's done really, really well to get to the point he is now. And if you think about it, we're so early on in the season, Carlos and Charles together by the end of the season, like what could they achieve for Ferrari? So fantastic, and let's hope it wasn't a one-off, because they were in Italy. And let's hope that it continues, because, as you say, the more close battles we're having between both drivers and teams, the more exciting it is for us.
And something else that the fans will be quite interested in, or hopefully be excited by, is sprint qualifying, a new format which will be introduced in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in mid-July, and in Italy, in Monza, in mid-September, and potentially in Brazil, but that's COVID dependent at this point. From what we've seen about this sprint qualifying setup that's going to be taking place on Saturday, what are our thoughts? Points are up for grabs, and the final lineup from this shortened race will, of course, make up the lineup for Sunday's race. So what do we think? Do we have sort of a positive outlook, a negative one, or a quite nondescript at the moment?
I'm fully aware, Tom, that you do such a magical job of bridging the gaps between our topics and beginning, that you very rarely get to be the first one to get a word in edgeways. So, Tom, what are our thoughts on the sprint qualifying? Will it be a success? Will it be Australia 2016 2.0? Are you looking forward to it being mixing and matching the grid? Will it be exciting even?
I have to say, I think it's quite a complex idea, insofar that it's called sprint qualifying, but it's not qualifying. It is a race, but it's called qualifying because they don't want to go and take the shine away from Sunday's race, if that makes sense. But my thoughts are that it's quite a good idea. I think that it does add importance onto Friday. Friday normally has practice 1 and 2, and realistically you can't really gain too much from that, and there's nothing that's drawing the fans to that. But if you're having a qualifying session for basically a mini race, I think that brings a great deal of value to Friday's session. I think Saturday as well adds excitement for the fans, insofar that you get a sort of bite-sized version of what's to come on Sunday. But I am concerned that by having the qualifying determined by a shortened race, that it's very unlikely you're going to get a Stroll qualifying on pole position, or Lando Norris qualifying. Would have qualified second if it weren't for if it wasn't for exceeding track limits. So the fear is in that regard that adopting this format will always lead to the fastest teams and the best teams, Mercedes and Red Bull, rising to the top, and it's going to essentially mean it's going to be even harder for the smaller teams to, as I say, strike lucky and to get a miracle on Saturday. But I do remain hopeful. I'm glad to see that, as Ross Brawn said, he's the technical director and managing director of F1, for those who don't know, that it will be scrapped if it doesn't work. So it's very much a temporary fixture at the moment. Yeah, fairly positive so far, but I can see the drawbacks, put it that way.
It's interesting what you said there. I have quite a few points. Mostly, I'm not loving the idea, but I'll get onto that. But yeah, the point you made about the lesser, the less common people but getting pole position and things like that. There's obviously still a chance that they could get that from the Q1, Q2, Q3 situation that's now on a Friday. And obviously they could end up on pole for this qualifying sprint quali, whatever. They could have done pole for the first race on Saturday. But the problem is with that, if they were then to go on to win that Saturday race, that's great because they may then get pole for the following race, but whatever, or do quite well. The points given in the Saturday's race are minimal. There is 1 point for third, 2 points for second, and 3 points for first or something, which is quite depressing. If someone, for example, someone like George were to in the Friday quali to get into Q2 or maybe even Q3, qualify 9th or 10th or something, and then make his way up to 5th or something ridiculous like that, in a normal race that would be rewarded, but that wouldn't be, and then by the time it was the Sunday, he wouldn't be up there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just sorry on that. I think it should be 10-1. I think it should be 10 for first and then 1 for 10th. I don't know why they didn't do that. I completely agree with that.
I know. And also, just talking about the Friday, I feel as if I don't 100% agree with the fact they're now putting qualifying on the Friday, because most people, and we've got to remember that this year has been some of the most watched F1 races so far, ever. The viewership has been huge. But what they're doing is they're putting a quite important part of the weekend, of the format, on a Friday when people work. Not everyone can just drop everything and put on the TV. Do you know what I mean? I'm worried that a large portion of people who would usually watch qualifying won't be able to watch it because of work or school. And then if they miss the quali, they might be like, oh, well, I missed the quali, I won't watch. And obviously the diehard fans will watch whatever they can, but those who were planning on dipping in and out, they're not going to be inspired to watch the Saturday if they've missed the Friday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I don't think putting something as important as qualifying on a Friday is the best idea, because for me, qualifying is an important part of a weekend. I'm like, oh, Saturday afternoon, it's quali time. And talking about the race itself, you're absolutely right. It is another race. Actually, I just called it that myself. I just said the race. The sprint quali itself is a race itself. But essentially, what they do in F2 and F3 is the fact they have a sprint race on the Saturday and then they have a feature race, a longer race on the Sunday. It might be the other way around, but either way, that's what they have. And that's what they do, and they admit to that. But it's the fact that F1 are going oh, it's not a race, it's not a sprint race, it's a sprint quali, and it's well, no, it's a sprint race, and it works very well for F2 and F3, but I'd rather they just admitted to that. And the interesting thing that F2 do, which I think, going on from what you said about how it's just going to be the same people, F2 get the result of their first race on the Saturday, and then they reverse the top 8 for the following race on the Sunday. So that top 8 will be, so if you finish first on Saturday, you start 8th on Sunday. So for me, that would have been something that would make it more worthwhile, this whole thing. But to me, it seems not 100% worthwhile in the sense that they're doing all these changes, but the end result will probably be a Mercedes or Red Bull win on Saturday and a Mercedes or Red Bull win on Sunday, when if they are really looking to be out there and do something completely different and exciting, they didn't quite go far enough, if that makes sense. So, to conclude, I'm not a huge fan of the Friday. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Friday sitch, and also I think, as you said, Tom, I'm not convinced that having this sprint race on the Saturday will do much for mixing up the starting grid from what it would have been anyway.
Yeah.
Tristan.
Well, look, I mean, just like these sprint races, this is supposed to be a bit more of a sprint episode with these quick fire topics. And so I think it would be nice that I'm a bit of a juxtaposition to you, Liv, and I actually quite like the idea. I feel like it's natural in Formula One to have an evolution of methodology in the way that we determine who's at the front, and we give things a go. Let's try it. Why not? And I'm quite looking forward to seeing it. Now, I really like the fact it'll make Friday more worthwhile. That currently Friday is pretty dull because the best you can say is, well, look, practice 2. Yeah, that's what it's going to be like in the race. Great. And so instead of having that, we're going to have some practice and be like, okay, and then boom, time trial. Brilliant, because that's what qualifying is, and I think that gets lost somewhat in the conversation about qualifying. Why I personally love qualifying is they're not against each other in a sense; they're against the clock. It's time trial. Brilliant. Brings me back to Gran Turismo on the PlayStation and going against myself in time trials. Love that stuff. So having that on a Friday would be really, really good. It gives some more meaning to the weekend as well. And yes, you're right, Liv. For those like me and you who work, we are going to have some explaining to employer about why I'm watching qualifying. Or rather, I just watch it when I get home. But does that matter? No, actually, my answer is no, I don't think it does. Because if you're a really hardcore fan, you dedicate your Saturday to watching it. If you're not you're not a hardcore fan, it's pretty difficult to be like, sorry guys, I'm not coming out between the hours of 2 and 4 because I want to catch the qualifying. So I don't think it will impact the casual fan as much as you perhaps think. And also, for the real casual fan who is just getting into the sport, what better to get a taste of F1 than sitting down and watching, a shorter Grand Prix to find out if you like it? I feel like that entry point is going to be brilliant. So yeah, I feel that's going to give so much more meaning to the Saturday. And then, should you reverse the grid? Well, I'm in favour of reversing the grid, but I don't think it would solve any problems. On this weekend showed that actually when Hamilton had a 30-second gravel pit penalty and managed to get himself right up into second. What if I said let's reverse the grid, and the only danger, let's face it, is at the very beginning when Mazepin slams into the back of Hamilton and we'll go way. So would reversing the grid work? No, not really. Would that mean that the best rise to the front? Yes, it would. But that's exactly what happens in qualifying, and it's kind of what should happen in Formula One. I am worried that artificial excitement would dilute what Formula One is all about. So that's my general thought about Formula One sprint qualifying. It shouldn't be called sprint qualifying, it should be called sprint race. Qualifying is on Friday, great. And I think it will help the casual fan and also just mix things up a little bit. My biggest problem with it, Liv, as you said, is for some reason they didn't give points to everyone who comes in the top 10. Yeah. Like, what? What are you doing? Like,
that seems
because
unfair.
what that does is cause a problem where you suddenly have the people who are rising to the top pushing out further and extending their lead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It will just be Hamilton, Max and one other, whether it be Bottas, Perez or Lando, getting those 3 points every time,
that's the biggest
plus
issue.
the points they get on the Sunday.
If anything, it might make it really exciting is if you said, well, how about first place gets 3 points, fourth place gets 4 points, fifth place gets 5 points, etc., and you go up maybe the other direction to bring some balance back to the...
Yeah, but then you try and finish 10th on purpose, wouldn't you?
Disincentivise winning.
It's difficult.
What we're saying is difficult, but there is definitely, I think, some ground to get made up in the sense of giving those who come in 10th place in the sprint race a point. Because, hey, as you rightly said, Liv, that could be Russell. In fact, it could be Russell's only chance for points because
this is
Mr. Saturday.
We've clearly seen, he can't last a whole race in points, but he can rate
like from Mr. Saturday to like Sir Friday.
Mr. Friday and a bit of Saturday. But then that's a really good point you make. That someone like George, who does seem to have incidents whenever he's trying to get points or he's in the top 10. A shorter race could be just enough for him to remain on track, on track for points. So that's a good point, and he won't get anything.
But I think it's the takeaway really is it's good that they're trying something new.
Yeah. Trial and error. Yeah,
I definitely think it's good to try something new, and I think that it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is the future. I'm a little bit like, okay, let's see what happens. And as you say, that there is parts of it that bother me. That's the only thing that's like the name the fact there's no points, the fact that people can't watch stuff on Friday, but I don't mind the idea of mixing it up at all. That's fine.
See, I know the idea of this is to make Friday more interesting, but when, as you say, we consider that there's buttons worth of points on offer for Saturday, are people going to be really that invested in qualifying for a sprint qualification or race when there's little prize to be gained from it? Like, it kind of, for me, doesn't... As we say, if it was 10 points, 5 points, 2 points or whatever, at least there'd be, 10 points, that's quite sizable for a mid-ranking team, or hell, even for Hamilton, Verstappen or the constructors at the top. But are people going to go, brilliant, that means that Daniel Ricciardo has a good probability of getting 3 points in the sprint qualifying round because he's qualified in pole. Yeah, it doesn't reek of excitement to me.
Well, maybe not, but we don't know because we haven't tried it. And actually, one of the things that I think is also quite important to mention is it makes rain really far more powerful. How many times have we had rain on a Friday and gone, no, it's come on a Friday. It's only practice. Well, that rain impacts Friday, which impacts Saturday, which impacts Sunday. So I think there is more to it than what people are saying. And having a quick peruse on Twitter, of which there is our own Formula One Twitter, F1 in Review. You can follow us using the links in the description. But having a peruse on Twitter, it looks like people seem to be roughly on the fence, which is roughly where we are. And that's maybe not a bad place to be. But hey, what the alternative is we stick with the current system where no one pays attention to Friday. Saturday is Mercedes dominated with a little bit of Russell sprinkled in there as people yet again get wowed by the fact that Mr. Saturday can perform on Saturday. And then we have Sunday, which is Mercedes dominated. So we're at a point where we might as well try something new. And in, I don't know, a few races time, or 10 races time, when we've had Silverstone and it was a flop, Liv can sit there laughing at us. I mean, I'm disappointed they started out with Silverstone because that's such a dull race. I'm not sure it will demonstrate the longevity of the format.
And to try and potentially only 2 races, because, I mean, the Brazilian Grand Prix doesn't look too hopeful right now. It kind of makes you think, only at 2 races are we going to get a fair reflection of this format before it's potentially permanently implemented for next season, which is apparently the plan if this all goes well this season. Is 2 enough? Not convinced.
Going on what you said, Tristan, Liv, you'll be like, ha ha ha. I might be, but I genuinely do want it to succeed. I just, at the moment, have these thoughts about it. But I would love it if it did, because, you know, the whole point is to make it more exciting, and absolutely well. I do think, though, a little bit of the don't fix what's not broken or whatever. I don't think really that it's hardly like it's broken like it is now. We still love it and watch it week in, week in. It has the highest viewership it's had in years. And I don't know really did it really need fixing right now? Like, I think it's pretty exciting this year as it is. And, you know, we've got Drive to Survive has helped with, you know, new people watching, and I don't know, I feel like if it was like another 5 years down the line, it was still the same, you know, maybe, but I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, but I mean, I really hope that I'm wrong, and I want to see it succeed, because it would be so good to see if it worked. But I just feel like there's certain elements that aren't 100% worth it at the moment.
So thank you very much, dear listener, for once again listening to the end of another episode of F1 in Review, and specifically to another Imola-centric episode. That's number 3 if my calculations are correct. You'll be happy to know that F1 returns this weekend. We're going to Portugal, and the F1 2021 calendar has certainly set a very high bar, so here's hoping these standards can remain moving forward. And I believe pretty dry, pretty sunny, no rain scheduled at the moment for the Portuguese Grand Prix, but anything could happen. Until next time, thank you very much for listening.